All right. Okay, well, good morning and welcome to the Employability Skill Series, where we explore the top skills employers are looking for in candidates. Each week, we will cover a different topic with thoughts and insights from professionals in a variety of industries. I am your host, Megan Morrow, Associate Director of Business Career Services, and today I have Shari Szabo as my guest, and we will be discussing the importance of taking blame and sharing the credit in the workplace. Shari has been with Florida Southern for 34 years. Her father, Frank Szabo, was the Assistant Dean of Students for 38 years before retiring. So a lot of family history there. That's cool. Shari has served in several roles during her time at FSC, which include advancement, public relations, alumni relations, student development, student life, and Academic Center for Excellence through Academic Affairs. Student graduated from Florida Southern in 1983 with a Bachelor of Arts in Broadcast Communications. She worked for 7 years as the news director of WONN WPCV Radio, which was an NBC radio correspondent, covered everything from space shuttle liftoffs, weather emergencies, national beauty pageants, and Florida electric chair executions. That still blows my mind. Shari is currently the public address announcer for athletics for women's volleyball. So good morning, Shari. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm happy to be here and appreciate it and honored by the invitation. So this should be fun.
Oh, I'm very excited. So tell us just a little bit more about yourself, especially like, your career journey and where you started and kind of how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So you can tell by some of the things you shared, it's like, oh my goodness, how in the world did you get back here to Florida Southern from that standpoint? Yeah, I had a wonderful experience here as an undergrad at Florida Southern. Didn't really get a lot of choice about where I was going since my dad was working here, but I knew it was the place for me. And little sidebar, our house was actually on campus too. So where I think it's a construction zone now that's between Rinker Technology and the safety office. There used to be a 2-story red brick house. So that was one of the houses I grew up in. And before that, when I was a tad younger, there was a house where the beach volleyball courts are, where our beach volleyball team plays in the Greek Village area, in the Public Commons area. So little trip down memory lane as a Szabo kid. But had an amazing experience here at Florida Southern, being prepared to go into the broadcasting industry. And those, you're talking early 80s, and radio was king. I say, folks would read about it in the newspaper. They would see a glimpse of it on television, but we would get to it first. And we were a very news heavy organization. And as you mentioned, I was an NBC radio correspondent. We were an NBC network. So I had the opportunity to cover some amazing stories and get some national coverage and win some awards. And that was exciting. And then I had the opportunity to become a mom. And decided that maybe those 24-hour news days and having to be there for weather emergencies and what have you might not be the path for me, and maybe I'd want to be in the college world as my father was. Of course, somehow it slipped my mind that my father used to work 24/7 for Florida Southern. So anyway, back into the swing of things, had the opportunity to work in advancement. Certainly I was I believe connected in the community from my news days. So that led into a public relations opportunity here at Florida Southern. I did not share this, but I did a little hop, skip, and a jump and served as a film commissioner for our county for about a year. In the meantime, I was consulting still for our college president here at Florida Southern back in the day, still at the time. So my clock's time kept ticking from that standpoint of being with Florida Southern, but that was fun. So marketed the area for motion pictures, television, and commercials. Had done some of that in my role as PR director from Florida Southern. Of course, the Water Boy with Adam Sandler is well known to have filmed in one of the classrooms in Edge, and that was a really cool experience. for our students and for me. That was neat. Had the chance to come back to Florida Southern and served as alumni relations director. I think that was probably one of my favorite roles. Also continued to do some PR, and then ended up doing a little bit of I like to refer to myself as a utility player. So wherever I think there's a need, I like the adventure that comes with going to some different areas, learning some different things, and serving in a variety of capacities. And that's kind of how I ended up wrapping around and getting into the student life side, into the academic support side, academic advising, and then back into student life side. So I'm exhausted by that journey. I don't know anybody else. Our students don't look like they're too exhausted yet, so they have some exciting things to come in their time.
That's really cool. Very, very cool. And that's actually what's kind of really cool about our organization too. I mean, like you said, you served in so many different capacities. You got to stay with the same organization, but you got to do all these different things. And I think that's something that students need to consider. I know when I talk in class about if they get a job offer, that to consider all of the things. And for me, that would be one thing, like, is there advancement opportunities, or are there lateral move opportunities? Are you going to take this job and just be, this particular position? Like when I used to teach in public school, that was it. You were a teacher.
Right.
There was no lateral moves. There was no promotions. Like you're a teacher until you retire,
Right. Right.
But here you could, clearly see all the different opportunities. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing your story.
Sure.
That's really cool. And that you lived on campus. I didn't know that. So ever evolving, ever evolving. So, I also think it's cool too that your initial degree and your path is not what you're doing now.
Right.
And
Right.
the same with me, like I used to work in community mental health. I shared with you, I also used to work in prison, which is so funny. Like, because sometimes just for fun, I'll just be like, I'll throw in like a conversation. I'll be like, oh yeah, back when I was in prison, blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of leave it like that and just see if anybody catches it. And I'm like, what? What? And I'm like, when I worked there, but just kind of fun. But I think that's also important for students to know as well. Like, you don't have to know 100% what you're doing, or also be open to the fact that what you do coming out of college may be something completely different than what you do, like what you thought you were going to do. So that's really cool. Your story is a great example of that.
Yeah. And Megan, I would say that I think I remember so vividly when I was hired at the radio station, and they were a huge believer. Radio wasn't back in the day necessarily a time when they would look for someone with a college degree. That was back in the early 80s. So a lot of it was just kind of, blood, sweat, and tears, and you worked your way in. But Art Robotham, who is actually is one of our trustees, an amazing man, and he was a strong believer in a college degree, and he wanted employees who had a college degree, and so hired this young woman with a voice that needed to still grow a lot, and but he also was a believer that with a degree from an institution like Florida Southern, you could step into any situation, you could step into any interview, you could handle yourself in any form or fashion. And so I just remember that very vividly. He just felt it prepared you in so many ways. And so I will be forever grateful for that opportunity that he provided for me as my first professional job.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows that degree shows that you can finish what you started, that you're committed, that you're trainable, coachable, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so great. So let's kind of dive into our topic here. Our topic today is taking blame, but sharing the credit. So what do we mean by that? Like, especially in the workplace, what is your take on this topic?
Sure. I've always come from a place in a leadership role where if I've messed up, I'm human. I think it serves a leader better to admit when perhaps they've done something incorrect, or they've made a flaw, or they didn't think about something as fully as they needed to do. I don't believe that it necessarily shows a negative vulnerability to your team. I think it shows vulnerability, and that's okay. And I don't think that has to be perceived as something that's negative. So, I mean, gosh, I wish I could be perfect 100% of the time. I hate to break it to me. Maybe when I was younger, I always believed that I was 100% perfect. But certainly as I think you grow and you learn and you recognize that you're not always going to get it right. And so let's admit it, let's be open, let's take the blame, and let's, if necessary, take the consequences associated with that. And I look at that from a standpoint too, not only if it was something that perhaps I did not do to the level that it needed to be done, but if it was something that someone on my team perhaps did not do correctly or at the same level. I represent that team member. And so I'm going to take the quote unquote hit from it, to say, I should have caught that. That should have been me. So I would step in and do that. And then transversely, the sharing the credit. I probably, I don't know how well I would have done with the concept how Florida Southern certainly has all these wonderful group projects. And I appreciate them greatly. I'm probably a little bit of a lone wolf when it comes to that. And that's kind of my comfort zone, is to do a lot of projects just myself. But the wonderfulness about being in a team environment is that you don't have to be that lone wolf. You step outside that comfort zone if that's not quite for you, but you relish in the experiences of others and you see their growth, and you have that camaraderie where you can experience it even better, by bouncing ideas off of people, by absorbing ideas, by growing concepts, and the excitement that comes, I think, with working with others. And so I don't think there's a greater feeling than if you're able to celebrate the accomplishments of others, and share that credit. I think that that's an extraordinary thing as a colleague.
Oh, awesome. I'm reminded of an experience that was quite the opposite of what we're talking about. And I like to share this because it was very character building for me, and also too, so the students can understand, like, they're going to run into bosses like this. So this is a story of a true manager, not a leader, not a supervisor, but it was anytime anything went wrong, it was my fault, no matter what. Even if it wasn't even my department, somehow he laid it on my shoulders. But anytime I did something that was good for the organization, that like he actually received acknowledgement from like the parent organization, he took all the credit. And it was like, look what I did. This is what this is what I'm doing at this. And it was all my work. And it was very deflating,
How did you handle that, Megan?
So that was very difficult. And I was young. And so I also love to talk about this too, because students might be feeling the same way. Like, they're young. Their supervisors, their leaders in the organization are probably going to be older. They might be a little bit more intimidated, but you don't need to be, because you don't deserve to be treated that way. And I just put my head down and I endured, which was the wrong thing to do. And I, for lack of a better term, I powered through a year, which I swear that job aged me 10. It was just awful. And I've shared this in all of my classes. Like, you don't want to work for in a situation where you're waking up every morning going, oh my God, don't make me go. Don't make me go. Yeah. It was even to a point where I couldn't even enjoy my weekends, because I knew that Monday was right around the corner, and that's just no way to live. But I would ask him sometimes when he would be like harping on me, like, oh, you made all these mistakes. And I would say, well, where? Well, what mistakes? And he'd say, oh, that's not the point. You just made these mistakes. Like, it very much is the point. Where are the mistakes? So I ended up that organization lost a really valuable employee because of the way that this guy refused to share any of the glory, and refused to take any of the blame. And you're only as good as your team. Leader attitude reflects leadership. So when you have a team who's doing great, then that looks good on you too. But when you have a team that's not doing great, and as a person in leadership yourself, you're self-reflective enough to know, like, hey, if my team's screwing up, what am I doing as their leader or not doing?
Right.
So how do you handle that? That's a good segue. Like, when you see that your team is maybe kind of like not hitting the right benchmarks, or they're kind of maybe not performing up to par, like they can, how do you typically address that?
I mean, I'm big on trying to motivate them continuously. So, always having in my mind, what are the things that I can, is it bringing in donuts one day? Is it just texting them? Is it, my emails are not known to be flowery. But I always try to make sure that I'm thankful in the email. I say, a quick, great job or something like that. So continual affirmation, which I think then can help when there are periods where some things need to be readdressed. And you have the typical yearly evaluations and that kind of stuff. I like to put it back to my team. Sometimes, we can't always see perhaps as clearly with our own eyes as others see us. And so I like to put it back to them to say, what can I be doing better for you? What is it that you need that perhaps I'm not delivering to the level that you need? What am I doing too much of? What am I doing not enough of? What is it that will get you to that next point and not necessarily make you happy? That's a personal thing. There's not much I can do about that, but what can I do to make your work experience a better one? And I feel like if I can make the work experience a better one, then their productivity is going to be better. Their product is going to be better. It all coincides.
Oh, absolutely. When you work for someone who values you as an employee, as a member of the team, and not just like a servant, and something about you, Shari, that's always struck me, every interaction I've had with you, you're very authentic. Yeah, nothing about you feels fake or forced. And you know what I'm talking about when people like just overdo it and and you're just kind of like, okay, this is not even genuine. You're just fluffing stuff up. You feel very authentic. I'm not necessarily on your team, but I've been able to have the fortunate experience to be able to interact with you and work with you. And I see that in you. And I can see how your team probably responds very positively to you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
it's very evident. It's very, very evident.
Thank you.
But something else.
That means a lot. Yeah.
Oh, good. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. But something else I wanted to kind of dig into, and I'm sure that you probably do this, and I know that my students have heard this a lot, especially those that are on the call that are in my class. When there is a mistake, there's, just own it, right? Just own it, whether you're the leader or whether you're the teammate. You could be the janitor, you could be the CEO. Like, if you just own it, then there's a level of respect versus trying to, push it under the rug or place the blame off of somebody else, like my previous employer that I was telling you about. Praise in public, kind of reprimand in private kind of thing too, as well. Again, I think that just builds to the camaraderie and that cohesiveness of a group. If you're like shouting out their praises, but when they do need to be, and students, you will make mistakes. You will need to have those uncomfortable conversations from time to time with your supervisor, with your leader, with your higher up that, hey, you kind of screwed up, but let's just work through it. And Shari, I like how you said, like, what can I be doing to help you, be better or do your job better? Or, that's very like introspective of you. So I think that they probably really respect that from you.
Well, and I think it's so important too. And not every boss that you come in contact with or supervisor will you respect. And so that's, I think, because we all respect different things. And I think, we're going to come across a variety of people and many people will be mentors, which is wonderful. And if you can take something from each individual that has been your supervisor, and it can definitely be a, wow, I want to be like this person in this way. It may also be, oh, I do not want to be like that person in such a way. And so I think that's, those are the proverbial work lessons and life lessons. I think with every person that we encounter, we kind of walk away with that in terms of, wow, I really like the approach that person used. Or I love where my office is in the first floor of Rogers. I have my door open most of the time. And I love hearing staff members in Rogers and the way they have conversations with students, and whether that's an academic advisor, when I had overseen that area and listened to our academic advisors as they were working with students, or I'm hearing our community living team, or I'm hearing Maggie Mereday's team, I'm hearing Erin's team, and the approaches and the conversations and the importance of being a great listener is so important. And I think that's a skill set too, that, tying it back to taking the blame and sharing the credit, did I listen well enough to be able to deliver what I needed to deliver? And then, kind of that listening, tying in, what does your team, what does your team need to hear when you're sharing the credit too? I think that there's power in words in both ways. And so knowing your team well enough to know what are the best words also to use.
Yeah, that's I've had, supervisors, Erin included, that'll say like, how can I celebrate you? How do you like to be celebrated? Because that again speaks to the authenticity of the leader, the genuineness of the care. Because like me personally, I'm not real big on sweets. Don't get me wrong. I love them.
Just send them down to me.
This is why I'm glad I'm not in Rogers. I am safe tucked away on the opposite end of campus on the third floor, where there very rarely are there sweets and treats that are there. Thank goodness for that. But I am envious of the student traffic that you get where you guys are, because just having that flow. So like once a month I sit down in the lobby and I table for an hour once a month just to get that flow and just those conversations and just that bonding, that the students can see me, whether they've been in my class or maybe they had me a previous term, or, they're currently in my class, but just that kind of outside of the classroom feel, we get to know each other a little bit better. So I'm envious, but I'm also grateful for where I am. Because I see those on our team chat all the time. Donuts up front, cookies.
I know we're bad like that.
I'm like, oh my God, my waistline.
Coffee bar at Becker all the time with your coffee bar you guys have there. So
it's too funny. But yeah, so asking your team, how do you like to be celebrated? Some people really do want to be, called out and have those accolades and have the shout outs, and some are more private. Again, that is, sharing the credit, but in a way that speaks individually and personally to each employee or each member of your team. I think can just go volumes versus you just taking the reins and being like, okay, well, my team did good. I'm going to bring you donuts. That's what everybody wants. That's what everybody should like. And that's why I'm going to celebrate you. But if that doesn't work for somebody else, then you're not really celebrating them. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of advice would you maybe give a student? Maybe they find themselves in a situation like maybe similar to mine, where they kind of have a tyrant for a boss versus more of a leader that's really kind of pinning everything on them, or maybe not everything, but if they come across a situation similar to mine, like what kind of advice would you give that person?
Wow, that's tough. I think so much of it, I think there's a lot of factors that come into play. I think the factors that come into play, we all have different levels of tolerance. And so it's knowing when we've reached the height of our tolerance. What does our life situation entail if, if you were to look at going elsewhere? Can you afford to just say, pack your bags and the next day? My husband loves to tell the story. He had an employee where she didn't come back from lunch, and he looked and she'd taken all her family photos with her. And so that was an ultimate sign, right? That she had just had enough. And now he was not a tyrannical boss or anything like that. But, I mean, you have to be smart and in terms of making those decisions. But I think also, the recognition is it's a different day and time. I think I'm probably an anomaly in terms of having worked someplace for the number of years that I have. Whereas many of today's young professionals, you're going to have a variety of career paths that you're going to take, which is what is so wonderful. There are the proverbial chains of commands. If you feel like you can't talk to that boss, that there's not that relationship, then hopefully, there's an HR component that is available so that, you can have an opportunity and a pathway to express concerns. Um, and if all those things are in play, and you have to make sure you factor in self-care, because kind of like when I asked you, wow, how did you handle that, that kind of stuff takes a toll on you, and so you need to make sure that you've got some self-care that you can have, so that you're not taking it home, or if you're taking it home, you getting it out of your system as quickly as you can, being outside, being with your family, being with a dog, whatever is what gives you joy. If you've had joy, what I would kind of say, sucked out of you, you need to find some way to put it back into you.
Yeah, that's so true, because the situation I was in, it took a toll on my health. I would wake up crying. I would cry on the way into work. I cried on the way home. Every morning I was like, maybe I have a flat tire? Oh, my baby's sick. I have a migraine. It was just absolutely awful. But this went on for the course of a year. So students, please understand, like, you might have a misunderstanding, or also, people have bad days. I'm not excusing behavior, but if your boss has a bad day and they maybe like, say something they shouldn't have, or kind of come down on you, maybe wait a day or so and then try to talk to your boss. Like Shari was saying, there's a chain of command. So ideally you'll be able to go to that person and be like, hey, I don't really appreciate the way you talk to me. Can we please talk this out? I didn't really feel like I deserved that. However, if you just do not feel comfortable with that person, like with my previous experience, there was no talking to this guy. There just wasn't. And unfortunately, he was the executive director. And on top of him would have just been, the parent company. And maybe I should have done that. Well, in hindsight, I should have. I mean, I should have been much more adamant about my self-care and adamant about the value that I was bringing, but I was young and I was very intimidated. So I learned a lot from that. But if you have a situation where you can't talk to this person, who's the next person up? See if we can't, bring this concern to either HR or something, whoever the next person is above your boss, and see if you can't try to figure a way around this, that you guys can work together. Because if not, you'll end up in a situation like me, hating your job, not even being able to enjoy your time off, because you just know that the job is waiting for you. And I brought it home all the time. I wasn't present for my young son at the time because I was just consumed. And that is just no way to spend the majority of your waking hours, is in a place you hate, So find something that resonates with you, that with your values and everything like that, that you feel like you belong.
Yeah. And Megan, I would say that, the kind of the flip side of that is, wow, when you do find a supervisor that motivates you, that knows how to get the best out of you, that is a huge gift. And so relish that and recognize what it is about that individual that makes them such a good supervisor. They're going to have flaws. They're not going to do everything perfect. But it's those pieces that, again, during your life journey of in the career world and elsewhere, you're picking up again all those things that will make you a better person, make you a better supervisor, make you a better colleague, just by listening and listening to, not only listening with your ears, but listening with your heart, because I think that can tell you a lot too. And sometimes that takes time for us to trust listening to our heart. But I think that's a really big component as we proceed in our careers, and just keeping that in mind.
I think so. I think that's a beautiful closing statement. I know that I'm in the fortunate experience where I have a supervisor that I highly, highly respect. She treats the entire team with respect. And so not just do I want to do a good job because I love my job, but I also want to do a good job because I respect her and I want to be the best team member, and then when there are these extra things that come up, I don't mind doing them, because I've, the way that she leads. So it makes me like, heck yeah, I'll step up. Yes, I'll pick up an extra shift. Yes, I'll work late. Yes, I'll do this for you, because of the respect level.
Yeah, which is you're doing
huge.
it for out of that as opposed to out of fear. And,
Yes, yes.
you know, that's huge.
That you'll catch more flies with, honey than vinegar.
You got it. You got it.
That's one of my favorite sayings. All right. Well, thank you again, Shari. Thank you so much, students, for joining us. If you do want your attendance counted for either Engage or for whatever reason, there's the QR code on the screen. I also popped the link in the chat pod in case you're on your phone and you can't scan. But thank you so much for joining us, Shari. Thank you again. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.